afternoon. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Melissa Ridgen. Lots to share with you today. We have a real mixed bag of stuff to treat your eyes, to give you a little history lesson about Inuit art and the new gallery that's opening here in Winnipeg. And we'll dig into the history of fishing rights over on the East Coast and a fun little bit of some big news out of the U.S. Deb Haaland, of course, made history being sworn in as the first Indigenous cabinet minister in the U.S. And on that momentous day, she was wearing a ribbon skirt by a Canadian designer who we have joining us to talk about that. And then later in the show, we will inspire your taste buds and leave you drooling as we visit Cree Subs, a new sub shop in Inuit Cree Nation near Edmonton. Well, we're going to start things off with a tour of Kalmayuk. It's the Inuit Art Center that is finally opening here at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. We've watched for 2 years as it's been built just down the road from APTN headquarters here in downtown Winnipeg. Two curators give us a tour we're sharing with you. So a sneak peek of that incredible facility. Take a look.
I think from the very beginning we wanted to honor and understand our place among our ancestors. Like I think a lot of Inuit will also come to this space and look for works that were made by their ancestors and family members as well. And so we did that installation because we wanted to situate ourselves within our own histories as family members, but also broader kinship relationships that we have with Inuit from not just Canada, but from Greenland straight through to Alaska. What we were thinking about from the beginning was doing a kind of radical inclusion, so having artists from really emerging artists right up into elders, to having an exhibition where children would be really excited to see the exhibition, but also like art scholars and art historians and curators would enjoy the exhibition, so thinking about a very diverse audience. We have media from everything that I think you probably expect to see when you think about Inuit art. We've got a lot of sculpture, prints, drawings. There are also dolls and wall hangings, and then we also have, like behind me, a installation work with sound and video art and animation. We've got a gigantic hooked rug, a mural inside of a sea can, large-scale photography, drone photography, like just kind of everything that you could imagine that an artist could make. Inuit artists are making those things, and so we've included as much as we can in this exhibition. Inuit art is anything made by an Inuit artist, and so this is not unusual work for us to see in the north, but I think what's different about installing work here in Kalmayuk is the scale that's possible. We have a full-size recreation of Zacharias Kunuk's hunting cabin, and we have a shipping container, we have this living room installation in the space, and I think that being able to work on such a large scale is really exciting now and will be in the future.
4 pieces that have family connections to each of the curators. So the 4 curators as well, they come from 4 different regions from across the Canadian Inuit homelands. So even just going from east to west, we have Susanna Igloliorte's beaded purse here. And this is a piece that is from the Nunatsiavut region, so out east. And then moving along, we have these 2 wonderful dolls by a Nunavik artist, and Nunavik being the sort of northern Quebec regions. And then we move along here to this carved tusk. And this is a piece that comes from the Nunavut area, which is, again, one of the larger areas that Inuit occupy within Canada. And finally, we have these 2 wonderful dolls, too, that come from the Inuvialuit regions, western regions, the Canadian Arctic.
It's pretty incredible to be in the building with other people in the building, so that's been really amazing. But also today I've seen so many local Inuit that I know, and so that's been really amazing. And we've had elders coming through, and so it's been really exciting. Even though it hasn't been a lot of people all at once, it's still pretty thrilling to see people in the space. are really excited for Inuit to get in here and to get to see the works and to maybe see things made by their relatives and by family members and people from their communities. So that's a big part of it for us. But also, I think that what we're trying to do is to show Inuit art from an Inuit perspective. So we want people to see through our eyes how we appreciate and understand Inuit art today. So, I mean, there's a lot of artists in the exhibition who have gone to art school, but there are many others that have trained in their communities. One of the things that I really like is that we've got artists in the exhibition who normally work in one media and then have made work in something else that's perhaps a little unusual. Like, for example, Jesse Tunglick is a really well-known jeweler. He makes work in metal as well as natural materials found from our lands. But in this exhibition, he made a sealskin spacesuit. So that was a dream that he had all of his life, to make this work. And so with the creation of this exhibition, we were able to make possible these kind of new inventions in people's artistic practices. Beatrice Deer is a really famous musician. In this exhibition, she collaborated with her longtime sewing collaborator, Julie Grenier, and they made this gorgeous kind of an amouti, but a kind of futuristic amouti. It's beautiful. My grandmother's caribou hide purse is my favorite thing in the show. But I would say that there's a lot of works in the exhibition that deal with the history and ongoing legacies of colonization and what that looks like today across the Arctic. So there are works that are about our concerns over resource extraction. There are pieces that speak to maybe lesser known histories of colonization in the Arctic. And I'm really proud and glad to see that these are here and celebrated among all the other works.
We are so thankful that Kamik gave us a tour ahead of time, and we were able to share that with you. Now, of course, it's here in Winnipeg. It's not in the north, where you might assume an Inuit art center would be located. It was created in partnership with Inuit, and Winnipeg was designated as the place that this center would be because Winnipeg Art Gallery offered to showcase these incredible pieces, more than 14,000 pieces, in fact. Nunavut reporter Kent Driscoll joins us with a little bit of background on how the Inuit Art Center in Winnipeg ended up here and how the Inuit feel about it. Kent, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Melissa.
So lots of excitement around
Thanks for having me anytime.
This new gallery. You know, it's stunning, as we could see from the tour here. You know, but the big question visitors might have is, why is it here in Winnipeg? Why is it not in the north?
Well, that's sort of a question we have here in Iqaluit as well, but the answer is simple. Like, there is not a large enough dedicated facility as an art gallery in Nunavut to house even a small percentage of that collection. I mean, we're looking at, and it's kind of amazing, the idea that there should be what they're calling an Inuit Heritage Center to have exhibitions of that type. That's actually in the Nunavut Land Claim, Articles 33 and 34. And Nunavut Tungavik, our land claims organization, has made some steps towards establishing that. They've got about 10 of the 19 million that they need to build some sort of museum like that here in Iqaluit set aside. But yeah, it is strange that one of the world's largest collections of Inuit art, and certainly a large percentage of the government of Nunavut's own art, is down the street from you guys in Winnipeg instead of down the street from me here in Iqaluit.
Yeah. You know, and how do Inuit feel about this? You know, what do you hear from artists? What do you hear from just people on the street about this? Because, I mean, here we're hearing, you know, lots of excitement that it's opening, and you kind of wonder, well, is everybody excited that it's opening? What are you hearing?
There's a certain amount of excitement for the idea that this collection, and it's such a great collection, is going to be displayed in the fashion it deserves. And from everything I've seen from the Winnipeg Art Gallery, they treated it in the fashion it deserves. Especially, I'm a huge fan of Jesse Tunglick's sealskin spacesuit. I'm so happy to see that in a gallery-type setting. But as far as for people, Inuit, who live here in Iqaluit, and in Nunavut, it's a case of, yeah, that's great, but boy, wouldn't it be great if we could have one here? Because, I mean, you got to look at the percentage of people who are artists in Nunavut. I mean, 33% of all Inuit in Nunavut are artists. Like, art is a part of everyday life here. And so a place like that would actually mean an awful lot here. There's also, and I know the Winnipeg Art Gallery has been very open to this and has been talking about the idea of taking through some traveling shows and taking them to different Nunavut communities as soon as that's more feasible when COVID restrictions are lifted. So we're going to get to see some of the collection, but sure like to see all of it.
You know, there's a lot of excitement here, as we said. Is there excitement there to take part in a virtual tour, which is going to be happening later this Thursday and Friday, so tomorrow and the next day?
Well, I know the people I've talked with, we're going to try the virtual tour, but as I've described to you in any number of emails, the Nunavut internet connection is like a tin can and a string. So the thing I'm really curious to see on Thursday is, am I going to be able to see that exhibit from an internet connection in Nunavut? I mean, I sure hope so, and if it is, I can only imagine that there's any number of school teachers here in the territory who would love to take their classes on a little tour through there. So, you know, fingers crossed, I hope I get to, and that's my plan.
I hope you do too. Ken, thanks for joining us. I'll just give our audience a little bit of information here. We mentioned that there is indeed a virtual grand tour at that magnificent art center, Kamayuk. You can be part of that history too. It is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. That's Central Time. You can travel through the 40,000 square foot center by Michael Maltzan architecture. You can see all of the incredible exhibits, including the visible vault, which was my favorite thing, floor to ceiling, filled with stunning carvings. There's going to be performers too. There's music, there's dance. My favorite hip-hop digger, Mikey Harris, is going to be there. It is free. It's accessible to everybody with a computer, so you can sign up at weg.ca/opening. And then there's a second part of the tour. That's on Friday, same time, 6:30 Central Time. You can register for that as well at weg.ca/opening. So Kamayuk was created, as we said, in partnership with the Inuit in Winnipeg here. It's a designated place for this center because the Winnipeg Art Gallery offered to showcase these incredible pieces, 14,000 pieces, in fact. We would be remiss, though, to not talk about the history of how many carvings came to be. APTN Investigates delved into this issue last year, how many Inuit TB patients were forced to carve, and their art was sold by the government to collectors. Take a look.
In the 1950s, it's estimated that 1/3 of the Inuit population tested positive for the disease. And letters from more than 800 Inuit patients have been sitting here at the Library and Archives of Canada, untouched for years. And for the first time, their families are reading their harrowing accounts of what happened. Half of the writers in the collected letters were also carvers. Galleries across Canada exhibit carvings by Inuit TB patients.
Dear Leo, I'm writing to you to let you know that I have received your letter I just returned to Moose Factory from Hamilton. It is very sickening. Leo, if I'm not going home this summer, would you ask the doctor if I can at least go outdoors? Oh my God.
Sarah Aragutanak's family wrote about their artwork while living in the sanatorium. Carvings like her family's are widely recognized around the world, but the history of how they became iconic is less known. Darlene Coward-White is the curator of Inuit art at the Winnipeg Art Gallery.
Well, Inuit have always carved because they had to make everything. Like they made all their tools and their weapons and their utensils. Everything was carved out of ivory, antler, often sometimes stone. They would make their pots out of stone. It was really like about 1949 is the date that we see it as beginning, because that's when a young artist James Houston went up to Inuit, and he saw people making little carvings, and sometimes they would use them as toys for their children. And people at that time were used to making ivory carvings for trade. But he was really quite excited about the idea of people making stone carvings, and that they could actually sell them at the Hudson's Bay Company Post. And so in 1950 he went up, he did a test purchase. They were all sent down to the Guild of Crafts in Montreal, and there was a sale.
James Houston worked for the Hudson's Bay Company back then, and the Department of Mines and Resources hired him to buy art in the north. He produced this pamphlet instructing Inuit on what would sell down south.
And so that's when things really changed. It really became a very important way for people to make money.
In 1952, the government held a conference to discuss what they called the Inuit problem, defined as economic instability, government dependence, and poor health. That led to horrific policies like the high Arctic relocation. Inuit families were moved to desolate northern areas under the guise of protecting their way of life. Carving was built right into recreational programming at tuberculosis hospitals and yielded thousands of dollars. But conditions were less than ideal. This patient letter explains. No wonder the Eskimos don't get better quickly. They carve in the room and the soapstone makes a lot of dust. I am carving for the Hudson's Bay people, the police, and the school teacher. And many patients complained of not being paid. Nurses, doctors, and even RCMP officers could buy from patients directly. But according to Rudnicki, that's not the only thing some of them took home.
And I found quite a few of these so-called vanished kids. I took their disc numbers. Everybody, of course, had disc numbers then, which was a way of identifying people for sure. There were just too many Johannesses in the world there. And I frequently discovered that the kid hadn't died, that some well-meaning physiotherapist, nurse, or even doctor took a liking to a child and took him home like a pet.
Carving was touted as a way for Inuit to express their world. Here, at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, a new Inuit art center is set to open. We found 7 patients who have art in the WAG collection that corresponded to their hospital confinement, and more than 140 artists overall. We shared our findings with director and CEO Stephen Boris in May 2020. He committed to ensuring these patient letters will be part of the story.
And this story about those Inuit who were in TB hospitals in the South is part of the history of Inuit art. And it's a story that is being told, but could even be told with greater depth and exposure to the Inuit Art Center.
And the Winnipeg Art Gallery has researched the artists even further. They are collaborating with us to bring recognition to the painful history.
And I think those letters would play a critical role in an exhibition, in a program, any initiative we do here that focuses on those decades in those hospitals in the South.
But the dark history of Inuit carving is often not a part of the conversation among institutions.
It was an incredible episode. You can watch that full episode of APTN Investigates Carving Home at aptn.ca, and you can click on the Investigates tab. I can tell you I was shocked to learn in that investigation that patients were forced to carve and their art sold to pay for their health care. This in a country that prides itself, of course, on free and accessible health care for all. Definitely take the time to watch that piece by Brittany Gio and Holly Moore. We have to go to a quick break, but when we come back, we talk to the creators of Gaspagawagi, The Lost Land. It's a new docuseries that's airing here on APTN. It's packed with history that you might not know about Mi'kmaq fishers from Listuguj who have been fighting for their treaty right to fish dating back to the 80s. Stay with us.
Join our conversation now. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
Gaspagawagi, The Last Land, is a docuseries airing here on APTN. It walks us through the Mi'kmaq fight to exert their treaty right to fish. It's set in the Gaspé Peninsula region of Quebec. We get an inside perspective on how a First Nations commercial fishing industry was born out of conflict and defiance and is now a key economic and cultural support for the community, helping to preserve Mi'kmaq language and traditions that were almost lost. Here's a clip.
Before the fishery ever started, nothing was going on. People were on welfare, barely working.
Well, you only can fish at night, sneak around.
But everything came to a head in 1981.
There were police everywhere, and they're all well armed, too.
The way they came in was just something that myself can never forget.
There's got to be some violence somewhere. Somebody's got to get hurt bad, and then they wake up.
We're going to develop our own. We're going to take over our fishery, but we're going to do it in a responsible way.
We can take care of our own river.
We're simply trying to fish and sustain a way of life as Mi'kmaq.
We're a strong and proud community that definitely has self-determination on the mind and in our hearts. Our fisheries is a great example of that.
Once I cut these ropes loose, everything for me melts away.
I love the water. There's nothing like it.
I don't know what's coming. Are we going to hit a hurricane? That's really good. Or not all that great.
Jesus.
There's going to be breakdowns. There's so many unknowns. It's exciting.
We can be the masters of our own destinies.
It's going to be a good week.
Gaspagawagi airs on APTN in English on Saturdays and Mi'kmaq on Thursdays. I caught up with two of the incredible women behind the docuseries, Lisa Roth and Heather Kondo. I am so excited to be talking to both of you today. I watched the first episode and just fell absolutely in love with this. Lisa, I'll start with you. What was the seed of this project, and how did it germinate to be this 13-part docuseries?
Well, we've been working, Resolution Pictures has been working with APTN on series for many, many years. And the head of our company, Ernest Webb, who's also the executive producer and co-director on the series, he was sitting around looking, what are we gonna propose for a next show? And one of our colleagues, Katrina Metallic in Montreal, says, well, I'm from this community out east, so they have a commercial fishery. That could be interesting. We went, So Ernest and I and Greg Lawrence, the other executive producer, co-director, went out to Listuguj, started talking to people, and got Heather involved because she's right in Gaspagawagi, and it was just like a perfect timing to be able to work with her. And we discovered that there's a great community, a very vibrant community of people there that have this really interesting job in a beautiful place that few people around Canada even know about.
It's so totally true, and this is it's an issue that is in our forefront now. Harvesting rights, especially out on the East Coast, involving Mi'kmaq. Throughout the first episode, we see all these kind of headlines ripped from the time back at the salmon raids in 1981, hugely critical of Mi'kmaq exerting their treaty rights to fish. You know, that was 40 years ago, and today the Mi'kmaq are still making headlines for the exact same thing, trying to exert those rights and Shabaganagati. Heather, I'm curious to know your thoughts on the coverage from then versus what you're seeing now as a Mi'kmaq person and watching people just trying to exert the right that they have under those treaties and the coverage that's given to those, the issues that come up when they're doing that.
We're fishermen. This is how we live. This is how we will always live. And it's not our fault that the government didn't define what they meant by a moderate livelihood.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm proud that we fight back. We always have, and we should continue to do so until that is defined properly, so everybody can be happy with it.
Do you feel that there's a greater understanding of Canadians now than there would have been back in the 80s, that these rights do exist, and not only understanding that these rights exist, but supporting people when they are exerting those rights?
Yes, I think there's more coverage, there's more ways for people to get their information. So yes, it is better now. It's almost like why do we still have to fight for this? It's right there in black and white. So yeah, it's touchy, and I totally support the fishermen.
Yeah. Listuguj has a day every year to remember the DFO raid and the what was described in the first episode of the series as kind of a cultural awakening that it inspired in the community. And they honor the people that, of course, were injured by police and conservation officers. Lisa, what was it like being in Listuguj for, and I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, Mi'kmaq data? Is that right?
It's called Migrating.
Migrating. Yeah. What was it like being there that day, filming that? I mean, it was touching as a viewer. I can't imagine, you guys being there, being part of it.
It was an incredible day. There was a lot leading up to that day, and that morning I remember being on the beach at Moffat's Landing where a boat parade took off, and fishermen and salmon boats, they had flags on their boats, and they just went across the river. And on the big dock, we had another camera crew on the big dock where next to the bridge, there was smudging and speeches and events going on. There was a march from the bridge to the community center, and there was a big feast. There's always a feast, right? There's always a feast involved. Yeah. Of course, we remember that. But I remember sensing the strength and pride of this community, and it was overwhelming, actually.
You know, my 10-year-old and I have watched this first episode, and he had said, I think everybody should see this. I want my friends to see this in school. And I thought about it, like, yeah, but I'm curious to know, I mean, me at 46, I'd never heard anything about this raid in Listuguj either. I'm curious, and I'll start with you, Heather, what do you hope that this series accomplishes? Like, who do you want to see it? What do you want people to take from it?
Well, I hope all of Canada tunes in, for sure. And I think they will take from the series a little bit of the Mi'kmaq side and how we're not out fishing anyone, we're not taking what is not needed, and everything is given away to elders. It's for the community. It's not a crazy making money for profit kind of thing. It's for the people, by the people, and it's I want Canada to see that we're not the monsters we're made out to be.
What was the best part of making this for each of you? Heather, you can go, and then we'll go back to Lisa. What was the best part of doing this?
I think it's the pride of having the show be on air on APTN, being a Mi'kmaq woman and showing my people. For me, that was the best part of it. People who wanted to participate, people who couldn't participate at first because they were a little shy, and then they worked their way in and they did great. Yeah, so that was.
Isn't that always how it
good.
goes, though? People, when you tell them you're there and you want to do, something, it's especially if you have a camera. I didn't notice this when I was a print reporter. It was much easier to get people to share and open up if you're writing, taking notes, right, as opposed to being there with a camera in their face. But I'm glad to hear that, people eventually all came around, because it's the characters, it's the people there that really made this. Lisa, what was your favorite part of making this?
Well, precisely that. My favorite part of making this was having an opportunity to go to these communities out east, especially Listuguj, to have an opportunity to meet the people behind the headlines, before the headlines really came out last fall. That's what we were saying, like this series, it started out just to be a lighthearted sort of series about a place and a people, an Indigenous community that few people get to see on TV, but it turned out to be a lot more. It's showing the communities that people see mostly on the headlines, who they really are, who the people are. And for me, the best part was meeting these people and understanding what they've gone through to protect their rights and exercise their rights in their community. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm jealous of the people that you got to meet there. Just as a viewer watching, it's like, oh, that would be incredible to be in there with those people. So Heather, I'm curious, if you want to kind of give our InFocus audience a little bit of a look at what's to come. Maybe many of them have maybe seen the first episode or two. We've got a few to go. Where does it take us?
It takes you all around Listuguj. It takes you from shrimp to crab to lobster to salmon. You meet a lot of wonderful people. A lot of wonderful people in this series. And it's the humor too. The humor is it's funny, it's light, and it shows our personalities, and it was just fun to do, fun to work on, and it's fun to see it now on TV all put together.
Lisa, what's the next project that you guys are going to take on for APTN? What can you give our audience a little heads up about something fun coming down the chute?
Well, we're developing season 2 of this series, in which we hope to see come to fruition. That if it does, then we'll be traveling to other communities in the Maritimes and Atlantic Canada, different Indigenous communities. And we're also working on another project called Lands Enchanted, about mysterious places in Indigenous territories that is just in production right now.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to have you back on to talk about that one. That sounds fascinating too. Thank you both for joining us today. It was great to chat with you. I was very excited after seeing the first of the product. I'm like, I need to speak to these women who are behind it. Much admiration for you.
Thank you for having us.
So glad we got to catch up with them a couple of weeks ago and share that with you now. Well, it's time now for another break, but when we come back, the Cree designer who made the ribbon skirt seen around the world when Deb Haaland wore it at her swearing in as U.S. Secretary of the Interior. Even Vogue took note of it. And we're heading to Cree Subs for some sandwich inspiration, including bologna and chips subs. Stay with us. Welcome back. New Mexico Representative Deb Haaland made history, of course, when she was sworn in as President Joe Biden's Secretary of the Interior, the first time an Indigenous person has led a cabinet agency. Now, a designer from Canada actually made the ribbon skirt that Haaland wore. Agnes Woodward of Kwakatus First Nation near Regina says it's still sinking in that her skirt is part of that history-making moment. She got a mention in Vogue magazine for, quote, rocking a ribbon skirt in political space. Agnes Woodward joins us now.
Congratulations.
Agnes, you know, the world has seen that skirt that Ms. Holland was wearing. You know, as you're watching it, what is going through your mind?
It was really an unbelievable moment. One that I was really kind of nervous wouldn't actually happen. But when I seen the photos of her lacing up her moccasins, I got really excited because I had been waiting, you know, since January to see if she would actually wear the ribbon skirt that I made for her or not. So it was really an unbelievable moment that I'm forever going to be proud of, and my family, I feel like, you know, all Indigenous people will be proud of.
Oh, well, we were all, when we saw it, we're like, yes! I mean, it was nice enough to see the ribbon skirt and then to see that there's this Canadian connection. You know, my mind was blown. How did it come to be that you made a ribbon skirt for Ms. Holland?
Well, my husband is from MH Nation, Fort Berthold Reservation, and that's where we live. I have a friend who is from the same community as my husband, and she has done work with Deb Holland. She's a good friend of Deb's, and Deb actually reached out to her to ask for help finding somebody to make her a ribbon skirt for her swearing-in ceremony. And so she reached out to me. As far as I knew, she was reaching out to a few other ribbon skirt makers, and we were to draw up a design based off of what Deb wanted, and Deb was to pick, you know, the design that she wanted to go with, and she picked my design.
And then you're waiting that day, like, is it going to happen? Am I going to see it? And then you see it, and of course, I'm sure your kids and your husband were all there cheering you on as well through this. They have to be so proud.
Absolutely, yes. I feel like when I first told them and I was drawing up the design, it didn't really sink in like how huge of a deal that was. So when it actually happened and everything was all over, you know, social media, definitely hyping me up about it.
We're looking at some of the other creations that you've made too. I mean, just incredible work. How long have you been making ribbon skirts for?
I have for at least 8 years now, 8 to 10 years. And just the more that I create, you know, the better I feel like my skills have become.
Yeah, there's no question that you are at the top of your game. We're looking at some of these creations. They just, you know, Vogue wrote about it, of course, which, I mean, it's one thing to be seen around the world, but for Vogue to stop and take note and write about this, like, I was screaming when I saw that. The quote was that Deb Holland, quote, rocked a ribbon skirt in political space. You know, did you ever think that something that you were going to be creating, or that ribbon skirts in general, would ever be something that we're reading about in Vogue magazine of all things?
No, I mean, in a way I have, only because so many designers, Indigenous designers, have been featured in Vogue. So that was a huge moment for all of us. But I feel like when it comes to the fashion industry, people go to school for a long time, you know, they work on their craft just to be featured in places like Vogue. So in a moment, it kind of felt undeserving, but at the same time, when a woman walks into a room with a ribbon skirt on, you can't help but take notice. And so I'm really part of that, and for all the beautiful support and encouragement that I've received since.
Well, where can we find your creations online?
I have a Facebook and Instagram page called Recreations. That's R with 2 E's and then Creations with 2 E's, you know, spelled like Cree.
Yes. Agnes, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today, and congratulations. I'm so happy that you got to be such an important part of history there too. We will have that image with us forever. Well, there is a new sub shop in town, and it's delighting eyeballs all over social media after one of their signature creations spread like wildfire. Kyle Peacock is the owner of Cree Subs. It's located on the Enoch Cree First Nation just outside of Edmonton. He lets us in now for a sneak peek at how the magic is made. Kyle.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so thankful that you can join us. It looks like you've got a busy day going on there.
Yes, well, we have a big lunch crowd all the time, every day.
Why did you pick a sub shop to open? Before we get to the amazing creations, I want to know what about this sub shop that interested you in getting into that business?
Well, it's always been a dream of mine. I always wanted to have my own sub shop. I was going to initially get Mr. Sub in here, but their food comes from Toronto, and my stuff comes from right across the street. So I made up my own store instead on my to have fresher homemade soup and bannock, and fresher vegetables, and the bread from the Italian bakery in Edmonton.
You've got a new twist on some of our favorite res classics. Tell us about the bologna and chip sub. How did this come to be?
Oh, you know what? Personally, first time I seen it was a few weeks ago. The owner of Cree Coffee started making this. He said it's called a powwow special sandwich or whatever, and I'll show you how it looks. It's right here. Give me a second.
Yeah. We want you to walk us through the process.
This is what they do. My sorted sub has ham, salami, and smoked bologna on it, and I seen him crushing chips on it, and he said it's a powwow special. So, a person started doing that at my store, and others do it as well. But I'm a nutrition coach myself. I eat turkey on whole wheat.
So the nutrition coach in you is avoiding the bologna and chips powwow special, but you have a customer base that loves it.
And we also have a soup that all of our cookums in the past used to make and present. It's the hangover soup.
Oh,
it's
let's get a good close-up of that one.
It sells a lot. Can you see it?
Well, we're going to get a zoom in there. Chris, the camera guy, will zoom in for us.
Can you see that at all?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
There you go. Just like cookums,
yes. So what are some of the other creations that you have going on there in your sub shop?
Well, we also have we have cookies for kids that are made right here in our ovens. Our soups are made from scratch every day. We start at 9 a.m. and they're ready by about 11ish. So I'm going the extra mile to make sure I brought healthy food to the First Nations. Mm-hmm. You know, that was my choice of food, was subs and soups that were fresh and homemade.
You were telling me when we chatted on the phone about a soup that I have never heard of before, a shepherd's pie soup. What's that all about?
Which one is that, sorry?
The shepherd's pie soup.
Oh, I invented that about a month ago. A lot of people like shepherd's pie, so I made up my own recipe, and it's also a big seller here. We have that twice a week.
And so tell us a little bit about some of the other subs. Does everything have bologna?
The Philly steak sandwich is a big seller too. I hung out at some Philly steak sandwiches places, and I kind of stole the best from other sandwich places. Like my Italian sandwich I got, my Italian sub, I get all my ingredients right from the Italian Center in Edmonton, which is capicola, mortadella, and Genoa salami, but and provolone cheese. But we can also add all the veggies you want on it. So I take the extra mile to make the sandwiches that much better for my customers.
What about a franchise? Ever thought about, just going to stay at Enoch, or you got plans to expand?
I've only been open up for almost 7 weeks, and this store is going so well. It's something to think about in the future, but right now I'm going with what works, and it's doing well with the casino being closed too. We're located right beside the casino at our Shell gas station called River Creek Convenience Store. And it probably wouldn't, my store wouldn't do well if it wasn't located here, because there's a lot of customers that are First Nations that come here for the tax exemption cards.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, the store wouldn't do as good as it's doing if I was located somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the word of mouth is out there now, and I'm on the CFWE native radio station also. So yeah, so they called me a marketing genius, but it was all by accident.
Well, sometimes that's what makes it genius, right? Is it mostly Indigenous customers, non-Indigenous customers? You get a mix?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear that properly.
Is it mostly Indigenous customers, or is there a mix of Indigenous and non-Indigenous?
It's a variety. It's a variety of customers. We have more and more non-natives coming into our store and trying our food and coming back because our food is fresh. Mr. Sub comes from Toronto. Subway comes from the States. Mine comes from across the street.
Love it. Well, thank you for letting us in and giving us a tour.
You're welcome.
Of Cree Subs. We're going to have a little bit more of that on APTN National News in the coming days.
And we are located right across from the River Cree Casino.
Just
we'll
outside
be opening
of
up
Edmonton.
soon. Thank you. On the west side of Edmonton, yes.
Perfect. Okay, well, we are going to go to social media now with our social media editor, Jesse Andrushko, with your reactions to Cree Subs' signature creation that went wild online.
Thanks, Melissa. Online, we shared this picture of Cree Subs' bologna and potato chip sandwich. We got a lot of comments about the sandwich, along with some of your favorite traditional meals. Let's take a look. First from Lynn. As a non-Indigenous white woman, I can honestly say I'd happily put that sandwich in my mouth. Lisa commented, add mustard and you have a school lunch. Krista said, I think I need to test my DNA. This sandwich has me questioning my ancestry. From Vicky, this sounds good. When I was a kid, I liked to eat mayonnaise and potato chip sandwiches. I can only believe that fried bologna makes it better. Albert commented, dang it, now I just gotta try it, lol. They must have neck bones too. Billy said, eating stuff like that skyrocketed diabetes for us. From Abon, I'm an Indigenous person who eats healthy so I don't succumb to the diabetes and weight issues that ultra-processed settler food causes. Joyce said, I used to love fresh bread with lots of mustard and bologna sandwich. That's it. I can still taste it. Lastly from Maggie, that sandwich looks colonial. I love the greasy Yukon fish that is much more traditional, man. I can eat a ton of that little fish like a stick of licorice. Bones, head, tail and all. Thank you to all of our viewers that commented. If you want to share your thoughts or your traditional meal, here's how. Join our conversation now. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus. And send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
The guys here in the studio with me were just saying that bologna sub would be pretty darn good with crushed up ketchup chips. Well, with food security a growing concern in Canada's north and COVID-19 pandemic making people rethink how secure their food sources are anywhere, a First Nation in the Yukon shares how they started their own farm so they can be self-sufficient. And as Sarah Connors tells us, the farm is quite the hit with the community.
So this coop here is probably produces the most eggs.
Kevin Bain is the manager of the Carcross Tagish First Nation farm. These eggs are just some of the food that's produced here. The 565-acre farm just outside of Carcross produces its own meat.
Hey, Big Mama. Hey, you.
Like these sows and these rabbits. CTFN funds the farm, which cost about $25,000 to operate per year. Bain says almost everything produced here is given away for free.
We give to the daycare, to the school, people on SA, people with disabilities. We try to get some to everyone in some way or another.
The farm is linked to this community garden in Carcross. Here, community members grow vegetables and harvest honey and tobacco. Everything produced at the farm and garden is fresh and organic, which Bain says is a plus for elders.
So we're looking at more having just grain-fed food out here, no chemicals or anything added to it, and everything just to help them more healthy.
Bain says the farm and garden also give the community more food security. In 2012, parts of the Alaska Highway washed out, leaving grocery shelves bare.
All the stores in Whitehorse, there was no produce or anything on any of the shelves. And meanwhile, out here, all the elders and people on SA, stuff like that, they were all getting fresh vegetables every day.
In the farm's kitchen, staff are making rose petal face cream.
Everybody wants the rose petal face cream, and we never have enough.
They also hold weekly lessons for community members to learn how to do things like canned food.
We try to preserve as much food as we can for the elders. Because
Donna Wolf is a chartered herbalist and helps out at the farm. She says many of these traditional medicines were picked by CTFN citizens or grown in the garden.
So we got ready for COVID patients.
Like this balsam tea, which she says can help with COVID symptoms.
It takes the poison out of your body.
Wolf says elders are grateful for the food produced here.
What they like about it, it's organic, not store-bought, grown here. They have no worries about, for example, pork chops, fish, moose steaks, moose burger, moose stew.
Later this year, the farm will buy 300 birds that they'll raise for poultry. There will also be opportunities for First Nations youth.
This year, I want to get youth working out here between 18 and 29, where they can have a permanent position during the summer.
Bain says anyone is welcome to come to the farm so they can learn what it's all about.
Fresh food for the people and, and citizens who want to buy some or anything like that.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Carcross.
That pig looks like the bologna walking around before it's made into a sub. Well, we are all out of time for today's show. Thanks to all of our guests and our viewers, and to the crew who makes this happen every week, Marcy. And our InFocus episodes, by the way, are available as a podcast at aptn.ca/podcast if that interests you. I'm Melissa Ridgen. I will leave you with some more from Kalmayuk, the Inuit Arts Centre here in Winnipeg. Have a great afternoon.